Ma, could you start the show for me, please?
أنا مش أستاذة بالتاريخ ولا أنتو كمان. شو قولكم نحن العالم نتعلم هالأشياء التاريخية مع بعض. أهلا وسهلا ليؤس 101.
Thanks, Ma.
You're welcome, حبيبي.
Once again, guys, it has been a crazy week here in the good old US of A. And yeah, it turns out Trump is actually going through with it. I mean, I know it can signify many things, but he's actually going through with one of those its. You know, that big old wall that he wants to build on the border between the United States and Mexico, the wall that Mexico's president recently came out and he said,
Lo he dicho una y otra vez. México no pagará ningún muro.
Yep, well, the Donald recently did one of his favorite things of all time now, which was to sign an executive order to make sure that construction on the wall begins as soon as possible. I mean, I guess the upside to this, if there is a silver lining in all this, is that this is only a disagreement between two governments, right? It's not like it's going to lead to an all-out war like the one that we had with Mexico between 1846 to 1848, all because at the time, President James K. Polk believed in something called manifest destiny. All right, let me break it down for you this week, guys. In 1836, Texas wins its independence from Mexico, and from 1836 up until 1846, it is its own republic until the United States annexes it and brings it into the Union. One of the main reasons for annexing Texas, I refer to my previous statement about President Polk and manifest destiny. And by the way, what is manifest destiny? Basically, President James K. Polk came out and said that the United States had a divine right bestowed on us by God that America should claim all of the North American continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific. See, here's the thing about Texas, though, which is why we got into the Mexican-American War. When the United States annexed Texas, it believed that its border was the Rio Grande. Mexico, though, thought that the border was the Nueces River. Wow, a dispute over a border between the United States and Mexico. That sounds eerily familiar. Have you guys ever heard of anything like that? Now, initially, President Polk, which is a name I will always find hilarious, but President Polk tried to buy the land from the Mexican government, but they refused his offer. So he naturally took the next logical step. He sent the troops down there. And the soldiers that were sent to Texas, they were led by one General Taylor, aka General Zach Taylor, aka Zachary Taylor, the man who had become president of the United States after James Polk. Now, as to why Polk sent the troops down to that part of Texas, taking a somewhat extreme step, it said that the reason he did that was to try to provoke Mexico into fighting the US soldiers, because if they started fighting the soldiers, then the United States would have a reason to go to war, thus a reason to defend the land that they were on. Now, Mexico saw that the United States was sending troops, and they also sent troops to that disputed area. And on April 25, 1846, a skirmish ensued between Mexican and American troops, and Mexican soldiers killed 11 American soldiers. And that was all it took for President Polk to say that Mexico had, quote, shed American blood on American soil, end quote. And the war officially began. And I would like to point out this interesting tidbit. There were some notable American figures that did fight in the Mexican-American War under the command of Zachary Taylor. Two of them specifically were Ulysses S. Grant and Robert E. Lee. Two guys that fought side by side in the Mexican-American War, but then less than 20 years later would fight on opposite ends in the Civil War. Now, while America and Mexico were going punch for punch on the Texas border, the sentiment about the war in the United States was, I think it's safe to say, split right down the middle. Because while Polk claimed manifest destiny, a lot of Northerners saw this as nothing more than a power grab, because they saw Polk as a Southern gentleman who wanted nothing more than to acquire more land so that the South could have a wider expansion of slavery. As a matter of fact, in 1846, when the war started, there was an attempt to block slavery from potentially newly acquired territory from Pennsylvania Congressman David Wilmot in what is now known as the Wilmot Proviso. Unfortunately, while it passed in the House, the Senate, which was comprised mostly of Southern Democrats, they immediately blocked it, and yeah, it never went through. Not to mention, a lot of Americans just thought that there's no real need to go to war with Mexico over land. One of those Americans specifically was a young congressman from Illinois by the name of Abraham Lincoln. As a matter of fact, after Polk made the claim that Mexico had shed American blood on American soil, Lincoln demanded of Polk to know exactly what spot was the American blood shed on. And this actually became known as Lincoln's spot resolutions, because he asked time and time again, remind me exactly what specific spot you're talking about was American blood shed on. And even U.S. Grant, who was fighting in the front lines of the Mexican-American War, would later write that it was, quote, one of the most unjust ever waged by a stronger against a weaker nation. It was an instance of a republic following the bad example of European monarchies in not considering justice in their desire to acquire additional territory, end quote. Now, as for the war itself, it was pretty much dominated by the United States. Battles like the ones at Veracruz and Palo Alto were mostly one-sided in America's favor, and by September of 1847, American troops had marched right into Mexico City and taken over the capital of Mexico. The war finally came to an end in February of 1848 with the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which stated first and foremost that the official border between Texas and Mexico would be the Rio Grande. Now, the treaty also said that the United States would give Mexico $15 million and it would also assume its debts to U.S. citizens. But in return, it would also gain control of Mexico's hold over the New Mexico and California territories. The New Mexico and California territories that Mexico relinquished to the United States now include present-day New Mexico, California, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and most of Arizona. And let us all remember the main reason that the Mexican-American War even happened in the first place: over a border dispute. Now, I'm not saying that the United States and Mexico are going to go to war over the fact that Mexico does not want to pay for Trump's overpriced real-world Lego project. But hopefully, neither side gets too hot-headed to the point that they end up doing something that they will later regret. We've already done this once. No need to do it again. There's no need for a sequel. And that is it for this episode of US 101, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Really do appreciate it. For those of you that have subscribed to the channel, thank you for your support. If you haven't subscribed yet, I really hope that you will. Hopefully you like and share the videos, leave comments below, and also make sure to check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/USA History 101. You can check out all the previous episodes of this show and check out some articles that I post up there that I find fascinating about American history. I will see you guys next Tuesday for another episode of US 101. Until then, we are all done. No hate, no fear. Immigrants are welcome here. No hate, no fear. Immigrants are welcome.